Afternoon, commissioners, council, all in company or in presence today. We have had we've had time to review public comment. We have a series, I would say about approximately 100 public comments. I'd like to propose that we address the themes within these comments and approach it that way. But I also want to open it up for other commissioners to share their thoughts on how we might move forward tonight. In lieu of the public comments and the finished products or the products that we have, the 3 maps that we already have presented. Is there a commissioner with another thought or additional thoughts?
Chair Moore, as you know, I initially, as we were talking about this on our way into the meeting, had thought maybe we would just go comment by comment through what we've received, but just a quick pass. And in the course of doing that, identify comments that we think might be actionable, perhaps comments that we do not think would be actionable for one reason or another, and briefly perhaps explain those. I'm sure we'll get into some themes there. And then there are some comments that unfortunately we just can't, there's nothing we can respond to there. They're just sort of, we don't like this map.
Right,
There's not a lot we can say about that. On the other hand, I know you were concerned about the amount of time that would take, perhaps to go through every comment that we've received. As you said, we've got more than 100 comments here, I think. So, and then I'm sorry to just finish the thought. Once we completed that first pass, as we flagged ones we thought might be actionable, then we could go back maybe and look at the ones that we thought we might be able to take another gander at the map and think about whether we could find a better approach based on some of these suggestions. So that's why I was suggesting kind of a 2-pass approach. The first just being a quick reading, basically, of the comments, and the second being more in-depth analysis of whether they were realistic or unrealistic, or doable or undoable.
Yeah, I don't think it's an either or. I think we can do both things at the same time right here. So if I hear Commissioner Paul correctly, we will, each of us will collect, as we're sitting here, a theme, present the theme first. As we present the themes, actionable items, make a pass of our 100 or so comments looking at the actionable items. Once that's been done, we'll go through and look at the comments that might be present and the themes that exist that there's little action to take, but explaining for the good of the order why these things are not actionable. Is that what we're saying, Commissioner Paul?
That's one approach.
I like that.
It's a little different approach than I was suggesting, but that's okay.
Okay.
And maybe more workable in terms of the time we have available. So.
Excellent. So at this time, commissioners, we're going to go through, identify themes, lift them up. And as we lift up these themes, we're looking for things that are actually actionable and moving forward in that manner.
Chair Moore?
Yes, ma'am.
Are you all going to be going through the questions map by map, so specific to each map?
We, well, I think that's an option. I think some of the themes cross over maps. And so, yeah, let's start initially by looking map A, map B, into map C, but knowing that there'll be some themes that go across maps.
Okay, I just wanted to ask because I wanted to be able to put the comments up on the screen.
Perfect, thank you. So yes, we'll start with map A. And council, will the comments that you put on the screen be visible to those at home as well, or is this something that we would only see?
All comments can be viewed on the website for the public comment tool. But if the screen for CTV comes to this public comment tool, they'll be able to see that on the screen as well.
Excellent, thank you.
Ms. Walters, could I just double check the maps we should be looking at in the ESRI plan dialogue are the ones that are under the shared plans, correct? Not the ones under recent or my plans, because they appear to have different dates on them in some cases. I see Columbus 2020 map A dated September 15th, map B dated the 22nd, and map C dated the 29th.
Those are the maps in the last time that we made any change to them, so I believe that you should be fine to look at those maps.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, so we are prepared or preparing to look at themes we see that are actionable steps that might be able to be taken in relation to comments we've gotten on map A.
I think one of the comments that we received was, you know, District A, and that is kind of like our downtown district, the fact that it extends to a large portion of the southwest area of the city, that may not be very comparable as far as the population and density. So I know that that was one of the points of feedback that we received.
And are you lifting this up as an actionable, or do you see it as us explaining to folks why that might exist and there not necessarily being action to take on that?
I think that it is a greater point to make. As another thing that I want to lift up is the west side and the comments that we received around the Westlands, Hilltop, Franklinton, and how we think about creating a district in the west portion area of the town. And I guess that is just an overall topic of conversation. I don't necessarily have an action item at this point in time.
Yep.
Chair Moore, if I could just make a general comment, I guess. I mean, a lot of the comments we're receiving, a lot of the comments we're seeing express concern that they feel that we're splitting neighborhoods or districts. Certainly, we tried to avoid doing that. But the fact is, the nature of this work and the specific instructions we were given make it almost impossible not to do that in a lot of cases.
Yeah.
I understand that other folks are not looking at the maps as perhaps we are, or at least I am at the moment. But given that our charge was to create districts that had equal population, there are a lot of cases where we really have not had a choice but to draw a line, perhaps move population from one district that might seem very natural for that population to remain, move them into another district simply to make up these equally sized districts. And so I think a lot of the concern that we're hearing is a result of those hard choices we've had to make in this process.
Yeah. To that point, would you want to share some of the other things in addition to the population in that 1% gap? There were several specific criteria we needed to adhere to that perhaps reminding folks of those standards we were using might help them to understand better how and why some of the neighborhoods they see as being gerrymandered aren't so much gerrymandered, but they're adhering to what we had as guidelines to move this work forward.
Sure, and much as last time, I need to make sure that I've got some notes in front of me, just so I don't leave anything out, but I'll do my best.
That's fair, but I think you've said it more than any of us, and don't feel that the burden's all on you to be able to recall them.
So yes, the charter amendment basically called on us to create 9 districts. And again, I may not be reciting them in the order they appear in the charter, but one of the requirements was that all of the districts need to be the same by population, not by area, but by population. And the way it's expressed in the charter is the largest and the smallest district cannot differ by more than 1%. Given that the population of the city is now a little over 100,000 based on the 2020 census, that means by a little over 1,000 people, basically, is our margin between the largest and smallest that we must maintain. And it's important to point out, because some of the comments said, why is this district so large?
Talking about the landmass.
Talking about the geography that they cover. And the answer is because that district encompasses at least some portion of the city that has a much lower density. An example, and this may have been what someone was asking about, the south side. There's a lot of rural area within the city, within the corporate boundaries of the city, and probably goes without saying, but part of our charge was to make sure that every voter who lives within the city of Columbus is in a district. So we go all the way south and all the way north and east and west into areas that may not even necessarily think of themselves as being part of the city at this point. But in any case, those rural areas are relatively undense. They're relatively sparsely populated. Therefore, in order to achieve districts that are the same size, the district that includes that area is going to get larger. Whereas, for example, the northwest side, which is relatively dense, or the near east side, which is relatively dense in most places, is going to be much more compact in terms of population, and therefore the districts will be smaller. So, size was one consideration. We were also required, wherever possible, to respect the existing community boundaries that existed. I'm not sure it was in the charter, but I think we identified very quickly that we also wanted to be respectful of area commission boundaries and boundaries of large civic associations and councils like my own Northland Community Council and so forth. We wanted to try to keep those areas as intact as possible, even though what we're doing does not affect, for example, the zoning process. But we were trying to make sure that we were encompassing the neighborhoods that exist to the extent we could and still achieve the other objectives. Another requirement was they could not be gerrymandered. We could not specifically construct districts that did not sort of follow some sort of logic for some ulterior purpose. And one of the ulterior purposes that was specifically precluded was to favor any particular party. And of course, as all the commissioners know, we don't have any data about where particular voters live, who are members of a particular party and so forth. So that hasn't entered into our conversations at all. And another requirement was that the districts must be contiguous. We can't have a district that sort of starts and stops or is in multiple pieces. In fact, the software we're using runs a check to make sure that that isn't the case. And frankly, that's one of the things that has caused us to have to make some pretty difficult decisions, because particularly in the outlying areas of the city, in order to construct districts that include 100,000 people, we often had to look perhaps further into the city, toward downtown, in order to find population to make up a district that would include a particular area. Further complicated by the fact we have many townships, we have independent municipalities that are embedded within the city, and that means that in some cases, the only way to include a particular population in a district was to connect them with some other group, in some cases via what appear to be pretty thin connections. And that's why a couple of folks had commented about sort of bridges, skinny connections between what seemed like very different areas.
Yep.
That's an explanation of why that happens, simply because there's no other way to form a district that includes folks in some of these outer lying areas without connecting them to the rest of the district somewhere closer in. I hope that's helpful, but
I think it's immensely helpful, and I think it addresses indirectly and directly several of the comments we had around either area commissions not fully being included in a boundary, or wondering how or why we may have, to use one of the public comment terms, gerrymandered. And so I think you've spoken to several of the questions I kind of wanted to respond to here. And I think in your response or in your summary, that addresses several of those things.
and I guess
Chair Moore?
just to be thorough, there was one more requirement, and that's just they must comply with federal, state, and local law, which we believe we are doing, and in fact, we believe the software helps us make sure we're doing that, right, in terms of,
Chair Moore and Chair Paul, just to address the gerrymandering portion, because Commissioner Frost and I received a question about this last night. So gerrymandering is when a district is drawn to favor or disfavor a group, and it kind of like, it's drawn to dilute a particular group or area's vote from mattering. So in this particular case, because our system is at large entirely from the primary to the general election, no one's vote is diluted by the district that they are placed in, because everyone votes at large for everyone on council. For that reason, there isn't any
Ability.
any true ability for anyone's vote to be diluted by our current process that will be taking place in 2023. So I just want to clarify that so that people understand that these districts are primarily residential requirements for council members, but they do not create individual districts in the fact that people are voting from their districts specifically, outside of the fact that council members must live in those districts in order to run from that district. So I hope that clarifies any other questions regarding January. I just wanted to kind of add that because that was a question we received last evening.
No, that helps a great deal. Yeah.
it may also help to point out, as folks have thought about districts in the past, they may have thought about congressional districts or state house districts or state senate districts. One thing that they don't see in those cases are the gaps that appear in our maps. And the difference, again, is that our maps only include those voters contained within the city of Columbus, and folks who live in municipalities embedded within Columbus aren't included, whereas congressional districts don't need to deal with that. They encompass
So,
multiple municipalities, right?
so you're saying that some of the white space that exists on our map, to someone that hasn't been as intimately connected to the mapping design as we have, you could look at it and see that a district is connected to another or has a white space between it and not realize that because of the charter, we can only deal with actual Columbus City land.
Exactly.
And the white spaces could be many of the townships we've encountered. It could be some of the outlying suburbs that connect. There could be many reasons, but their belief that something could be gerrymandered or not fully understand the logistics of why we combined areas might deserve a little more of an explanation like we just did.
It's also important to note that this was something that City of Columbus voters voted for that live inside of Columbus's incorporated boundaries. So anyone that is outside of the corporate boundaries did not vote to have districts. And all of the white spaces that you see are other townships or municipalities like your Bexleys, Whitehalls, Upper Arlington, Prairie Township, so on and so forth. So I hope that clarifies as well.
That helps. Again, thank you both.
Also, if when you're going to the comments, if you can say what number the comment is, I'm looking at the same thing that I sent you all. That way I can scroll down so that that comment can be shown on the screen. That would be helpful.
In terms of trying to group them in themes, again, we do see a fair number of comments that talk about how someone feels that their neighborhood or a particular neighborhood or area that we have grouped together with another in a district, they feel that it is demographically different in some fashion, or doesn't share perhaps some of the needs that the other district, or the other, I'm sorry, neighborhood or area does, and so forth. Again, some of that is just due to the mechanics of trying to develop these districts in some cohesive fashion. Unfortunately, our neighborhoods are very diverse, and we in many cases have perhaps relatively affluent neighborhoods right next to areas that are far less affluent, or far less provided with fewer amenities and so forth. It may be that this process is one way to help address some of those disparities between neighborhoods, as opposed to actually antagonize anybody by grouping them together. It may actually be helpful to have neighborhoods that are diverse and varied in terms of demographics, income, land use, and so forth, grouped together in some fashion. And in a sense, each of the districts may be more reflective of the city as a whole, as opposed to sort of little islands.
Yes. Anyone else want to lift up themes they're seeing? Again, right now, we're looking at map A. If there aren't themes you're seeing in map A, we could move on, but I do think there's probably a few more themes to identify looking at the comments in map A. A theme I've seen in map A has been comments related to the Hilltop, Franklinton, even the Westland area. And oddly, I see as many saying how much they appreciate how the districts in map A are kind of distributed. And as many as I see saying that there is some issue they have with how it's been paired. I think this speaks to what you were just speaking on as well, Commissioner Paul. Again, we have limitations with what we can do, and so inevitably we will have parts of districts that may not fully mirror the adjacent district that do connect and become part of the same district. Is there another commissioner that sees this theme or has comments they want to lift up connected to the comments we're seeing about the Northwest and the West area? All right. Council, when might it be a good time to solicit comments from those present physically today? Do we know? Do they need to submit a slip to speak, or?
They do not need to submit a slip to speak. If they would like to speak, that is fine. They just need to come up to a mic.
Okay. All right. We will continue. And we can come back to map A, but if there's nobody with comments right now for map A, should we move on to another map at this time? Any opposition to moving on to map B?
No opposition.
All right, with no opposition, we'll move on to map B to identify themes or actionable comments that we see there.
I believe it was map B in which I saw a number of comments that pertain to a particular area that I'm somewhat familiar with, referred to as Salem Village, which is in the Northland area.
Is that this one or map C?
I have it on
It's this
my
one?
list,
Okay.
map B.
Yep.
I'm sorry, Ms. Walters, I don't have the numbers because I actually printed them out, so I don't have row numbers. But if you scroll down,
Towards the bottom.
divides the Salem Village neighborhood is the beginning of one line, and then there's another immediately below it.
Do Control F, you can search for Salem Village.
I'm thinking I would like if it was possible to take another look at that. That is an area where I think we needed to kind of delve into the Northland area in order to capture some population and assign it to the far north area in order to make the far north area the right size. I'm wondering if it might be possible to find that population elsewhere. I have some suggestions.
Do we want to pull it
I do
up?
understand the objection is from folks in Salem, and there were, I think, 3 or 4 comments to that effect, so.
Do we want to physically look at the map so that we understand better what you're saying? Are we able to pull up map B?
Do we want, it's up to you, do you want to do that now, or do you want to just flag that and maybe come back later after we've identified a number of different things we can look at?
I think you proposed a solution as one of our action steps, but I don't know if everybody knows what it is that you're proposing.
Okay?
I mean, again, you can describe it again, maybe. We don't have to necessarily have the visual, but you're saying take what is the bottom, so the southwest
I can
portion.
zoom in on the public comment tool on map B in that area, and if he can point me to it, I can pull it up.
Perfect.
Okay.
It might be more helpful actually to go to the reference map, so I'll go to that.
So, yes, directly, in the view you have right now, directly above the legend that says District C, there is a portion that is, at least by my description, violet or purple. And to the north of that is a different district. I believe it's District E, yes. I believe that we probably needed to do that, or needed to do something in order to make up a sufficient population number in District E to keep to our charge. But these folks are pointing out that that basically takes a chunk of a neighborhood that is known as Salem off of Sinclair Road, a very active neighborhood in the Northland Community Council, and splits it in 2. And they're wondering if there isn't another way to do it. I think there might be. That would have less impact, I think, certainly on this neighborhood, but perhaps generally. So again, I don't know if you want to talk about that alternative now, or now that you maybe know where I'm talking about, we can come back to it.
Let's come back to it.
Okay.
Yep. And so does that cover all of the comments we see on map B related to Salem Village? Or were there other things that were mentioned about Salem Village?
I think the comments about Salem Village were pretty consistent. So
Yep.
I think if we were to look at that, we would probably satisfy all of those.
Yeah. I hate to go backwards, but as you said, Salem Village divided in half, it reminded me of a comment on map A. And because of the way that we received the comment, I can't see where it is, but the comment is that the map literally splits up an apartment complex. And so if we did that, that would have definitely been an oversight, and that might be an action item for us to go back and correct. But on map A, towards the end of the comments, 6 from last comment in map A, I don't know if that's linked to the pin that they dropped to show us where that is, but that was lifted up.
I'll take a look and see if I can please hit the 6 from the bottom.
Yes, ma'am. And again, I took it and made another spreadsheet with it, so it won't be with whatever number.
It's right here.
Yep.
Or wait, that's not the comment. Let's see.
It says the map literally splits up an apartment complex.
I think we consciously did that at one point.
Was that over on the southeast?
I don't know, but I remember doing that at one point.
Yeah.
It's in the northwest.
It's right here.
It's in
It's-
District F.
There are certainly cases where an apartment complex straddles a major right-of-way, a major roadway that we were attempting to use as a boundary.
Yes.
North
And I
High
can see
Street.
that happening on occasion, but it
Yep.
wasn't our intent necessarily.
North High Street is right here. Oh, sorry, you guys can't see that. I forgot I didn't have it on you guys' screen, my bad. This is the pin right here.
Okay?
North High Street is right here. I don't know which apartment complex they were talking about, but
It's almost impossible to see that it's an apartment complex from the
Oh, that little gray structure that half is purple and half is, okay. And what was the road?
it goes over Fitzhenry Boulevard.
That must be one
But I
of those.
don't, these other blocks could be part of the
Right.
apartment complex. I'm just not for certain, 'cause I
Right.
don't know what those are. The closest major road is High Street, which is right here.
Yeah. Okay. Noted
I know where that is.
for map A.
And yes, those are actually like almost breezeways that you drive through under the buildings. That probably is just one census tract, basically, that was selected. And there's multiple census tracts in that apartment community.
But again, as we look at redoing, that would be moved to the other area based on the proposals you made, right?
Perhaps, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that would be one way of going about it.
Okay. So I guess we're back on map B.
Okay.
I'd just like to uplift some comments that we received about the South Side District. It seems like individuals were pretty content with the way that we drew and kept the South Side communities together in District B, so that'd be kind of District I. So just something to make note of.
That's, yeah. A lot of positive comments, right?
I think as we're looking at the comments across the maps, like, yes, it's helpful to see where people disagree, but with, you know, just keeping it in mind. But it's also, for me, it's a little bit more helpful to see where people like it and they give specifics. Like, I like how you kept this together because then we can look at that across maps. And if we see that it's not together in another map, we can maybe make that edit. But that's, I mean, it's constructive criticism, but some of it you can tell isn't, I mean, nobody's as read in on this, the requirements as we are, so they don't, doesn't always stick. But some stuff we can't help, but then some of the stuff we could help, like the Salem comment, but also, and I think it's this one, or C, where they talk about the Berwick area, how it was separated from Eastmore. And like those specific, like, draw us in, and these are some comments we haven't seen so far, where like people are very passionately telling us yes or no about something, so it is helpful whether it's positive or negative.
Yep.
Chair Moore, you were asking about this comment that talks about the Old Oaks Historic District, and I'm unfortunately not familiar with where Old Oaks is. Do my colleagues know?
Yeah, Old Oaks is just south of 70 East. It's a little east of Children's Hospital, but south of 70 East. So if you're looking at a map, it's further east. Miller, Kelton, just north of Main Street, or I'm sorry, just north of Livingston, before you get to 70.
And that's called the Old Oaks Historic District? And so the comment says that the map B, breaks the Old Oaks Historic District across districts. And they don't see that making sense. And again, I think we spoke to our intent, but not our commission or not our directive. to maintain boundaries as they might exist, and we were using civic associations and area commissions where we could. But again, to be as specific as to take every historic district, that wasn't necessarily something we were able to do in every instance, but something we can look at. Yeah.
I would be curious as well about zip codes, because there were a couple of zip codes mentioned, and I didn't really think about zip codes as a big defining factor because they can be vastly different.
Yes.
Like 43219 is from the airport to Easton, and there's a whole bunch that it encompasses, so I would not have thought of that, but that might be something to look at.
Look at what?
A zip code overlay. Like, is there something to keeping zip codes together? I don't know that to be true, but maybe in some specific cases there is, but I don't know.
Is that an overlay that we have? Let me have a check.
Zip codes?
Yeah.
I don't know.
I don't think so. Because that's not something that crossed my thought process, so I wouldn't have asked for it.
I don't see it.
I can ask if that's something that they have.
I think it'd be just something that we could compare,
Yep.
not that we have to
There
define
might be
districts by.
also something on like, it might be Googleable to see like the overlay of the Columbus zip codes on Google.
Does anybody know the logic or how zip codes have been established?
I have no idea. I
Yeah.
can Google it.
Yeah. Again, I want to just say the theme I see when I look at all three maps and reading the public comment is how many people are expressing gratitude or supporting what we went through. Countless hours is how we've described it. I see more positive comments than anything. But again, as we distill through even the positive comments, there's themes in here that we can lift up. I see on map B and C questions about Linden and how or why we might divide Linden, or how or why there might be communities of different resources gathered together. Is there a commissioner that would want to lift up some of the conversation we had or some of the comments we heard from both those in the Linden community on area commissions and those in Clintonville on area commissions about working together?
Not specifically, but I do want to say how happy I am to see these comments, like specifically to hear from that neighborhood about their thoughts about it. And then two, about what they would or would not want to be connected to. And I mean, there were conversations in the comments that we heard about how it could be positive to have a mix of demographics. We also heard the flip side where people were concerned that the mix of demographics would, somebody's voice might get outweighed because of different kind of political power that the more affluent voices might have, that's a tough one to discern with what we're doing, because we don't control how that plays out, but we do control how we put it together. So I think that for me, I would say that it would be, in some of these that we keep hearing about, like, and maybe if one map we do, it is broken up, but then on another iterations, we make specific intent to keep it together. But understanding still, we don't control which map is chosen. But I think that to give options, but there's literally no way to do what everybody has requested at the same time.
Yeah, and I think what you speak to is what we've done. We do have a map with a united Linden, and we have one where Linden might be partnered with neighbors that have additional resources and a willingness to leverage their social capital. Yes, I think that is what we've produced.
I looked up zip codes. So zip codes are numbered with the first digit representing a certain group of U.S. states. The second and third digits represent a region in that group or perhaps a large city. And the fourth and fifth digits representing a group of delivery addresses within that region. So it's random, but not random, for lack of better words.
And I think OSU was the first to get a zip code in Columbus. I don't know why, for some reason, I know that as piece of trivia. So I think it's arbitrary, but it has been influenced by those who have influence. I don't know. I don't know what we would get. Yep.
So one thing I'd like to try, and I haven't had the opportunity to do it myself, but I will. I think we should try to construct a map that keeps every one of the 21 area commissions intact. And on top of that, perhaps adds to that by keeping the 3 architectural district commissions intact. And then see where we stand.
So you said area commissions intact,
21.
and then
Architectural review districts, 3 of them.
how does one become an architectural review district?
German Village, Italian Village, Victorian Village.
What about Marion Village? Are they architectural?
Who?
Marion Village? Are
No.
they? It's just those 3?
No.
Okay.
And what about the one we just learned of or spoke of recently tonight? What was that one called again?
That was the historical district, Old Oak.
So the 21 area commissions and the 3 architectural review commission districts have taken the affirmative step of coming to city council and becoming embedded in city code as a district, defined in the city code as a district. This is the boundaries. These are the people that represent those areas. And I think that should be our highest priority in trying to keep areas intact. And as we know from having spent many weeks on this, it's going to be impossible to keep all community districts, community associations, historic districts, people who identify themselves as a district intact. But I think that these 21 and 24 districts that have taken the extra affirmative step of becoming embedded in the city code deserve higher protection than everything else.
It seems to me, though, that we actually started at that point. I thought that we...
I thought we did, but I don't think we've accomplished it.
Okay.
And if I heard you correctly, you said you don't think that we'll still be able to accomplish it. Am I correct? Or
No, I think, and again, I'm not the best map maker in this room, that's for sure. And I know I've demanded having access to ESRI, and I'm not sure I've fully utilized it yet. But I believe that you can construct 9 districts that keep those 24 commissions intact. And it may look like it's gerrymandered. I might suggest that it's Malik mandering, but that's my goal. That's what I'd like to accomplish.
I second that vote. I mean, we have 3 maps. We're saying that between now and our next working session, we would all commit time to seeing and exploring how we can connect these districts.
And I'm not asking others to do it. I'll be happy to do it.
Right.
I'll try to figure that out myself. I just haven't done it
Okay.
yet.
Now, I do have a question. Again, what's it called? The Old Colonial, what was it?
Old Oaks.
So Old Oaks, what's their difference? Is it,
They're historical districts. Historical districts are districts that they have a historical designation. I don't know who they apply to get it. I'm assuming the city, but it's designated as a historical district.
so would it only be the financial hurdle of this designation? Like the fact that there's only 3 of these districts?
Those are not the historical districts. Those are the architectural districts that he's talking to.
I understand. So what I'm saying is, are we being exclusionary to only take the 21 area commissions, which I agree is a good criteria, but the other 3 that we've added, are we, by taking them, did they have some kind of a financial resource that gave them the advantage for that designation? Like, are there areas that have as beautiful houses and as invested of neighbors that just don't have that distinction because of what it took to be formally recognized as an architectural review commission district? Do you see what I'm saying?
Well, it took them coming to city council and convincing council to put them in the city code as an architectural review district. And if you live in one of those three districts and you want to renovate your house, you can't do it unless the district approves your renovation plans.
Right. So if I live, and I'm just thinking out loud, if I live in Old Town East and I don't want the burden of that additional expense, but I love my neighborhood and I'm as invested in Columbus and in the richness of Columbus, am I now second tier because I didn't go through the work of getting this Architectural Review Commission distinction?
In the city code.
Right.
I will say Old Town East is part of the Near East Area Commission, so.
No, I see your point. I'm just saying that we are doing the city's business. We are complying with city charter.
Yeah.
And in going forward in creating these residential districts, council residential districts, I think we should acknowledge and prioritize those districts which have been officially recognized in the Columbus City Code.
Would there be any flaw in us just sticking with the 21 area commissions?
There's just parts of the city that are not represented by area commissions, like the downtown core is not.
Right.
part of
Right.
it.
No, I understand.
Right.
Although if the downtown core wants to come and organize and petition to become an area commission, they can.
I will point out one other consideration. The Northland area is not an area commission, but we have been working with the city since the 1960s doing the work of area commissions. We're not an area commission because we choose not to be. And because if we were to become one, we would lose the ability to do some things that we are able to do now, not being legislatively chartered. So I understand your point, but I think also it does tend to perhaps give greater weight to area commissions at the expense of some other neighborhoods that are just as engaged with the city, but for whatever reason, may have chosen not to establish an area commission. I'm not sure that that's particularly fair.
Can I interject? So looking at the area commission's map, it looks like most of the northern of Columbus is not in a commission. But for the other parts of town, it could be helpful to keep them together, especially when we're hearing the comments from the west side and the south side, right?
Right.
And then, so that's just that part. But then as far as Old Oaks is concerned, it is part of the Livingston Avenue Area Commission. It is entirely encompassed in an area commission. So it would not be left out by this logic.
Yeah.
And so there could be, I mean, we could see what he comes up with, but there definitely could be some reason and logic to it, keeping them all together and then still having to do the part and parcel for Northland area and Northwest because they're not part of a commission, but that it's not necessarily a horrible idea.
Yeah. No, I'm not opposed to the 21. I just want to make sure that we all make sure that the other three, we're not somehow giving three areas. And the thing I'm thinking about is the documentary Flag Wars that was in Old Town East. And it was talking about, historically African-American communities that were losing footing and voices because they couldn't afford the financial, pass toll fee to get certain designations as historic areas. And so I don't think that there's three here, but I think there's more that would qualify if they had the finances to qualify with that designation. So I just want to make sure we're thinking about that. And I'm not necessarily opposed, but I do think that these three might have a financial advantage over some of the other neighborhoods that could also be architecturally beautiful and, distinct in their design. I don't know. But no opposition, just a thought.
So Commissioner Cabot, you'll maybe come next week and something to reflect on?
Well, I'm leaving town tomorrow for a short trip, but I will try to spend some time with the ESRU software and see if I can come up with something.
Commissioner Saraswella, this is a map of the zip codes that I have up on the screen. I can email this to you if you want to see it and play around with it in your own time.
To me, the zip codes don't,
We have enough complexity. I don't think zip codes is going to help us any. It's just going to make it tougher.
it's just, yeah,
Yeah, I just know you guys asked about it, so I wanted to.
yeah, thank you. It's interesting.
All right, continuing with our actionable reflections on maps A, B, and C. I think we're on C still.
We had not moved to C yet. from
Okay.
B. Are you guys ready to move to C?
Do we have comments for B still? All right, I propose we move to C. I thought we already talked about C.
I'm not sure I understand this comment, and I'm wondering if any of my colleagues could explain the logic here. As drawn, Linden is guaranteed to be represented by someone from Old Town East. Neighborhoods should be grouped with economically similar neighborhoods.
I'm not looking at the map, but I'm assuming what they mean is that they're together. Old Town and Linden are together in the same district, and they think that inevitably then the representation will come from Old Town. Just like similarly, if it was with Clintonville, inevitably the representative will come from Clintonville. That's what it's.
Assuming that politicians are usually affluent and therefore live in more affluent neighborhoods. Is that?
That's maybe what they're saying, and then it could be based on. Yeah, it's a political comment. Yeah.
There's nothing, you don't see if there's anything that we should.
Oh no,
look
I think
into
that we
there?
should look at that, but my issue with Linden and Old Town being together is more about geography than it is about anything else. It is a far stretch, and there might be other ways to cut it.
This is the comment, and this is the pin where that was at. So
Is that Linden?
And to the earlier point about
Linden Park right there.
Yeah.
at-large seats, I don't know where the guarantee or the perception of a guarantee exists in that comment.
Can you zoom out just a little bit?
I don't,
You said zoom
the
out.
historic, like, what we consider Old Town East isn't even in the Linden district.
That's what I was asking.
Scroll down.
That is Old Town,
What's Old Town?
right there.
That's, I would consider that more Franklin Park, but depending on who you talk to.
Right.
Yeah.
That's a whole debate.
And I don't know if it popped up here specifically, but I have heard people say that Linden and East Columbus would not go together. I've heard that, like, verbalized to me. And so that might be part of what that comment is about.
I think that's a very fair point.
It's funny. There's a comment that asks, what was the community like before the highway? And so when I hear that East Side and Linden not going together, I wonder how much thought is given to life prior to the insertion of the highway. I mean, because I hear stories of it being a single contiguous community once upon a time.
Yeah, that's where all the black people were, but now the highway's there.
Right. And do we know why it would be seen as a no-go to have Linden and the east side connected in the district?
Just culturally, Linden has more in common with the north side than it does the east side.
I was pleased, to your thought, Commissioner Frost, I was pleased to see the comment about Clintonville, knowing how contentious my neighbors in Clintonville can be. This map best defines the Clintonville area, referring to map C, without dividing it into several districts, and includes areas in the northeast closely connected to this community. So, and to your point as well, Chair Moore, about not just looking necessarily at the criticism, but also at the praise. That was a significant comment, I thought.
Yep.
guess I think two of the comments that I was a little bit confused at were comments 28 and 29. Basically saying that downtown extends all the way to the suburbs. So that would be the District A, and I don't necessarily, it doesn't really extend so far.
Yeah, I guess it's how you define that suburb.
Yeah.
I believe this right here is probably Whitehall,
No, that's West Side.
or West,
Yeah.
oh, sorry, going the wrong direction.
But I think what they're referencing is maybe
township.
part of like Valley View right there near the police academy training center. And they might see some of that stuff that's adjacent to Upper Arlington as suburb, and not understanding how or why it might be included with a district that also has downtown.
I see some overall comments, just the way that the west portion of town is divided is not very favorable.
But then there's as many that thank us for some of the changes that were made.
I personally am struggling with, I just feel like we're hearing conflicting things specifically on the west side of who wants, where they feel they would like to be grouped with, and like the
Yeah.
Hilltop and Franklinton versus the Westland, and yeah.
I'm also wrestling, Commissioner Saraswela, with some of the strong assumptions that are being made, like believing that the outcome can only be something that may not necessarily be the case. What we said earlier about gerrymandering and what it means, and then the reality of where we are with at-large voting, some of the assumptions they're making in their summaries aren't based in the reality of what is. I just wish there was a way to have it be two-way communication so that they understood some of the things we're looking at.
And some of it is what we have to be able to receive, digest, and continue, is this is long-seated and felt beliefs about how they've been represented so far.
Yes.
And so until this change goes into effect, there's some things that you can't see until you see it happening.
Yes.
But some stuff we do need to take a substantive commentary on the maps. But like having something drawn one way and being concerned about who's going to be elected from that district is not part of our charge in the way I look at this. Like we're responsible to hit the criteria that we're responsible to hit. And now the political machinations that go along with that have nothing to do with this body. And we can't get sidetracked by that whatsoever.
Thank you for that comment, Commissioner Frost. Any other themes we're seeing on map C, positive or negative? I have a comment I want to lift up more as a question than anything else. South Eastmore and Berwick in a separate district is Central and North Eastmore? Question mark. Absurd. The 43209 neighborhoods should be together. So this gets us back to that whole theme of the zip code. It gets me back in a space of appreciative inquiry about the east side and what does South Eastmore mean to Berwick, and why might they need to be held together, or why might someone believe this to be absurd?
Yeah, if you're looking at, so I went to Eastmore to preface this, right? So if you're looking at like where the schools are and like how the feel of it changes once you get out on the other side of Bexley, and even Whitehall is still part of that feel. Like, but between James Road and Hamilton Road, east to west, and then maybe Broad, a little north of Broad, all the way to Livingston is very similar. And then it starts to change into a southeast feel once you get towards like Courtright, Hamilton Road, and that's where it starts to shift again, and it feels more of like a southeast. But like this is just a cut through what some people might feel a cut-through neighborhood, just because it's like where town and country is, and it's very much one place. And so I could see how that would be
Got it.
of concern. That I know right there, that probably had a lot to do with contiguity and with population. And so that's kind of like what Dave was saying about the northern part on the other map, that there may just be a better place to cut
Yep.
for that part.
Can we make a note then to come back and examine that cut for the east side?
So I don't know what the plan is actually, but the way that I was gonna do it, now that we have this first round, is kind of go through, and I've bunched some stuff in overall comments, and then I'm highlighting ones that I would like to go specifically and take a look at. But I need a little bit of time to digest it, because I haven't been able to really review every comment.
Any other themes we see for map C to lift up? And so we said our first pass-through would be looking at actionable items in each of the maps. We have some things we're going to come back and look at. The Eastmore change, the Northland change. And then we said we would come back through, and I think this is where we are now. It's a little past 6:30. We said we'd spend an hour on actionable items, and then we said there'd be some things that we could lift up in comments that aren't actionable, but we could provide more background information on. Should we now go back through the maps A, B, and C in that order, looking for some of the non-actionable comments? Would anybody be opposed to that?
Nope, not opposed.
All right. So let's go back to map A, having looked at themes of actionable things we've seen. Let's look at map A to see what comments might exist that may require less action but more explanation, or things we just might not be able to do anything about. And again, as I look at things we might not have the ability to do anything about, I want to just say that I'm looking at a comment right here that says map A looks to be the fairest map of them all. And then right next to it, I see someone saying that's a gerrymandered map. But we've spoken to why what we're doing couldn't even be defined as gerrymandered. And I think as I look deeper into the comment, they're upset that dissimilar neighborhoods have been lumped together, which does not in and of itself warrant it being called gerrymandered. It's the way our city is laid out, and we had to make sure we had contiguity and connectedness as we created districts, 9 districts. And so I feel comfortable moving on with that one without there being any additional action. Just wanted to lift it up. And then again, I see a next comment said it's the most tolerable maps of all 3. They see the cohesive sets of neighborhoods coming from them. And so I just want to lift that up.
So are we asking to pull up map A and to make those small?
So just looking at the comments that exist for map A and seeing which of the comments might be things that we won't necessarily take action on, or explaining why it is that we won't be taking action on those things. For instance, there's a question, was any consideration given to the economic demographic for a given district? It wasn't a primary thought, but we did try to look for themes or connectedness as we made divisions or connections. Let's see.
Well, again, I can address one of the comments here as an illustration of what I was referring to earlier. I think a number of us have referred to. One person commented, the area bounded by Morse Road to Chase from Indianola to High Street sits within the Clintonville Area Commission and should be included in this map. That's a classic example of where we needed to find population in order to make a district that included the far north communities, up around Polaris. I'm trying to think of a nice compact way to explain the geography, but basically everything north of Worthington needs to be contiguous, needs to be in a district. It also needs to have, that district needs to have a population of 100,000 people. We can't borrow that from anywhere other than the places that touch it, that is, that touch those neighborhoods north of Worthington, et cetera. And so that's an example of where I believe we need to make a decision to take a portion of what many folks will think of as Clintonville and assign it to that district because of our requirement to create districts that are equal by population. And I think we looked at alternatives and we were unable to find any, or at least that was the best of the options that we had available to us. So.
Yep. So again, the explanation helps a lot. There's no additional action we're going to necessarily take, but that helps for that person and others with those thoughts to understand. All right. With nothing being heard, nothing further, nothing in addition being heard about map A, should we move on to map B with some comments that exist that might not be actionable, but we could provide a little better background as to why something exists?
I will perhaps point out, someone made the comment that District C in Map B combines east and west areas that the writer feels do not have much in common. I think actually when the author, whoever initially prepared Map B, and I don't remember which of us that was, rather intentionally looked at this map with a goal of perhaps considering an east-west alignment as opposed to a north-south alignment that seemed to naturally occur in the Map A.
Yep.
So in order to provide alternatives for council to consider, we need to take somewhat different approach to the task, and that was perhaps part of why this particular map reflects more of an east-west orientation than a north-south orientation. I think we've actually called it the east-west map or something to that effect.
Right.
Yeah, and I did the first pass of this map, and I think that District C is probably, I definitely agree with that comment that they made, like with it going across from northwest to northeast, they're very different. I feel like the other ones kind of get at it a little bit better, like if you look at the comments, but that one definitely, that specific district could use some tweak to it.
On map B.
Map B, but I think that it gets at on map A, there were some challenges they had with how northwest Columbus was split up, and I think the cut that we were able to make on the west side makes more sense, but yeah, it's still going all the way across from like Riverside Drive to Minerva Park is probably a bit of a stretch.
Okay.
And there were a couple, right, with that same comment, so something we'll go back and look at. And again, Linden is broken into 3 districts on map B. Just something for us to consider as we look at the maps and understanding each of the maps might deliver a certain set of needs we were trying to address, but just acknowledging it for what it is. And there's some comments about that. And then again, I'm deferring to Commissioner Frost, not to put you in a hot seat, but because you have so much lived experience in this space. Another comment about Berwick, in that it should always, absolutely always be with Eastmore 43209.
All right, oh, I don't disagree with that. I'm trying to look at the cut that happened, and that was a contiguity/population move there. I'm trying to figure out where to cut. So yeah, same thing as I said before, that we can look at how we make those cuts differently.
You're talking about the Linden cut?
Talking about Berwick,
Berwick
Eastmore.
cut? Okay.
And then there was a couple comments that were made about it feeling like the area was too big for the districts, but we have a population charge and not a area charge, and so I just wanted to clarify that. But understanding that I do definitely agree with that, we want to keep like geographies and cultures together as best as possible. But some areas, like on the south side, with the population being less dense, we have to cover a larger area, and so sometimes it will look like they're really large. But it is still the same population when you look at it.
Yep. Again, to that, perhaps the same point. Comment was that areas west of 270 have nothing in common with a hilltop and marble cliff. They go on to say that they thought the map we released in September was better, but of course the map we put together in September was 10 years out of date in terms of population, so we couldn't do anything with that except show it to you and ask for your input, which we got. But the problem again here is areas west of 270, for one thing, there's again, I think some of that rural character as you head out to the west. So you're talking about what will ultimately be a fairly large district that will encompass a diverse group of neighborhoods. Again, those folks in the far west, if you will, need to be connected to something else. And unfortunately, there may not be enough population to sort of make them their own district. They may be connected to things that, to other neighborhoods that don't seem to be similar simply because there's only so much population to go around.
Yep.
So. And it should be pointed out, and again, understanding the point my colleague has made, but area commissions were not laid out in consideration strictly of population or size of districts either. This may be a case of that because they mentioned it'll split the Westland Area Commission, but unfortunately the Westland Area Commission may just fall across a natural boundary that we've tried to preserve, so. I think those are all my comments, Chair Moore. Thank you.
All right, should we move on to the next one?
Yes.
All right. Not actionable or additional background information comments we see on map C. Again, I want to start with the positive, narrating the positive, that this map, as it's written here, this map does an excellent job of grouping together like neighborhoods. The districts make sense in geography as well as in neighborhoods. And as quickly as I read that one, the one adjacent to it says only option C makes sense. I don't know if they mean map C. I think
they
that's what
meant
they.
map C. I think they're saying this is the only map they like.
Okay. Yep.
And likewise, someone says, this map seems to align with current neighborhood structure better than the other maps.
Mm-hmm. Wait a minute. Southeastmore and Berwick in separate districts again. Absurd. Okay. We have a plan for that.
Ms. Walters, I'm a little confused, maybe, I don't know. Were the letter districts, the districts assigned the letters the same in the maps online as they are in the exhibits that we had? Because I'm seeing someone here saying Linden would be better served to be connected with District D or District F. But District F is on the far west side on map C in the copy I'm looking at, so that wouldn't make any sense.
They should be the same as on there, because I believe there's screenshots of this, so that might have been just an oversight or error on the user's part.
Okay. Should I get to it somewhere here?
I think there is a comment, comment 14, this map separates German Village into 2 districts, which doesn't make any sense for representation. I think there is a maybe misnomer in Columbus, like German Village boundaries are very different than what I think people think of what German Village is. So I believe under map C, we technically didn't divide German Village. They're established boundaries, but maybe the Marion Village, Schumacher Place area, individuals have concern with us splitting up. They feel like it should be in one district, so just wanted to call that out.
Mm-hmm. I guess I would just make the general observation that generally most of the objections to map C pertain to the west side, and most of the praise for map C comes from the northeast side and north side. So maybe that's a case where we could maybe try to come up with a composite of what we've done on map C on the north side and match it with something else on the south side, or the west side, I should say.
And did you weigh that against the number of positive comments I see on the west side?
I did.
Okay. Yeah. And again, I want to just say how grateful I am for the number of people that did make comments,
Yeah,
right?
yes, indeed.
And again, remind me of those individuals who presented to area commissions. I mean, what are some of the overall comments we've received thus far?
From those of us who have already presented, I go tomorrow. I have not yet presented.
And tomorrow's Hilltop?
Linden.
Linden, okay.
That's good. So we
Yeah.
can get some real-time feedback. So we did Mid-East Area Commission yesterday, and a lot of them were not very familiar with the process. So we just brought them up to speed of what we're talking about. And from map A to C, they have 1, 2, or 3 council member possibly. And it actually wasn't received unfavorably, especially with knowing it's at large. They seem to respond like, oh, so we could have 3 people representing the meeting. And I'm like, yeah, exactly, right? And so they're going to take a deeper dive and do individual comments and then maybe do something as a group. But it was the first that some of them had heard of it.
Has anyone else presented?
Nye and I went to the Near East Area Commission last week. Kind of same situation that they may not have seen them, but, we provided an overview, and just kind of let them know that, would really appreciate their feedbacks and comments, because
Yep.
each map kind of divides the Near East in a different way.
Yep.
I did speak to my neighbors in the Northland Community Council at that body's meeting, and Ms. Walters was there also. Actually, they'd already had some updates from me about this process. They'd actually, I think most of them had already followed it pretty carefully because they'd gotten all the emails, many emails, inviting them to comment and so forth. And I'm speaking of the folks who actually represent their neighborhoods at NCC, of course. I didn't hear a lot of objections or comments. I think they understood also the fact that, again, what we think of as the Northland area, which is really what the city calls Northland and Rocky Fork, is simply too large to be one district. And they understood that that was going to be, in the course of this, there would be 2 districts that would, at least 2, that would include what we think of as Northland. I think most folks understood what we were just saying, that all that means really is that they may end up with more than 1 council member who lives within what we think of as Northland. And
Right.
that is not necessarily a bad thing.
Yep.
So I did not get any negative feedback.
That's good to hear. So an all-around, general, pleasant reception as we go from neighborhood to neighborhood.
So far.
Yep.
I did several on my own, and some of them I didn't get a lot of questions on. They just kind of like took the information in. But what I found is mostly people just asking questions on process and understanding what's going to happen after this, and wanting to know like how does council vote on them. Commissioner Frost and I received a question yesterday, like what if no one runs for a district? And so we kind of answered those questions. We answered questions around gerrymandering. As far as the actual maps, I didn't receive a lot of comments on the maps themselves, but I did encourage people to head over to the public comment tool and leave their comments.
When you say, council, that they were concerned with the after, are they thinking more immediately after or how it might look 10 years down the line after?
More so to what happens once the maps are done. Like, so we explained to them that there'll be a public hearing on December 8th and that you as the commission will vote to send the maps over to council, and then council will vote on those maps and choose one of those maps. And so explain to them that kind of process of how the map will come into existence.
Excellent. So I think we've identified themes. We've looked at the action steps we can take. We have 2 particular areas in the maps that we might consider readjusting. And then we're even going to try to create an additional map that is fully inclusive of area commissions as best we can, maintaining their integrity and having the Architectural Review Commission districts as well included in those. And so it sounds like we have a group of us that will do different things over the week. Is there anything we need to get done today that we can think of as we sit here, commissioners?
Were you all planning to look at the maps at all? I know that that was mentioned earlier on, but I didn't know if you guys were planning on doing that tonight. I mean, because we only have really 2 map sessions and then that potential last session on the 9th. So I just want to remind you all of that so that you're making the most of the time that you do have.
I didn't hear the first part of what you said.
I asked if you guys were going to look at the maps at all tonight, because I know that was something that was mentioned in the beginning. The reason why I asked is because you only have 2 more Wednesday sessions and then the session on the 9th as a session that's right before the map release. So I just want to make sure that we're utilizing the time that we do have in the best way.
So I think this is, I guess, the point of discussion that we need to make is if we are planning on going through and making small tweaks to these maps that we've already created based on the comments that we received. I know a few of us are, I can speak for myself, I will take the next few days to prepare a map that I am envisioning in my mind that I, based on the comments that we want to receive, I want to play with, to present and reflect on next week that may be not based off of a specific map that's already been done. And so I don't know what the right dividing line is if there are certain maps we just want to make small tweaks to versus reflecting on a brand new map based on the comments that we received.
I know what I feel about it, but I'd love to hear other commissioners.
I know that I have not read these comments close enough to answer this for real, but like the question I have in my head is, are any of them just like, because we know how long it took us to get here. So it's like, we know how long it took us to get to this point.
Right.
Yeah.
So are any of them, like, we're just like, chuck it, like, based on what we hear, we can redesign a better map based on these comments to replace one of the 3? Or are we trying to keep the 3 substantively and make these small changes? I cannot answer that question without looking at the map and the comments side by side. But I know that I too will end up sitting, like looking across the 100 comments that we've gotten so far. We're like, can we compose a better map with these themes? Mm-hmm. Understanding also that I know that I cannot account for every single little neighborhood. Not that any neighborhood is like smaller than anyone, but like literally by area. we cannot get too into that, especially when every time we do this, we're going to get another neighborhood brought to us that we didn't know. I didn't know Salem was a thing until the last time we were together.
Understood.
And so for me, I need to look at the comments and the map side by side, and then because I'm not specifically loyal to any of the 3. I'm like, first of all, they all hit what we're supposed to do. And I'm confident that we at least hit that part of the responsibility. But can we do a better map based on the first comments that we got? Probably.
So having not heard from any of the other commissioners and not wanting to, I'd agree that we can do both, right? We can make the little tweaks, but we might find ourselves individually where we can end up doing a whole new map that is inclusive of every area commission. That's not expected, but it could be a potential, that could be what appears next Wednesday when we come together. We have 3 very functional maps that we stand behind. We have some comments that are directing us to make a few small tweaks, but I know several of the folks that are leading this work right now, several of you commissioners and your personalities, and I'd imagine that at least one of you will come back with a full-fledged new map. And I don't think any of us would be opposed to that. I don't think we're demanding it or asking it of any of you, but the reality is, as you sit and process, that may be something that we experience. And so let's be prepared for next Wednesday for that potential reality. But again, we have 3 maps. We have some feedback that's asking for a few minor adjustments, and
it should be noted, a good deal of positive feedback.
yes, sir. Yes, indeed. Yep. Yeah.
Also, keep in mind that if you choose to do a new map, which is up to you all to do that, the map will be what the map is for purposes of this process, because the comments that will left on that map are primarily because the charter requires each map to go out for a 30-day public comment review process. So it'll just kind of be as is. So what we'll be asking the public to do when this process is over is to basically say, what map do you like the best of the maps that are presented to you? So there won't be any changes to be able to made to a new map, as though there will be able to be changes made to the existing map. So I just want that to be something you all are also thinking about as you're deciding whether or not to draw a new map or to make changes to the existing maps based on the commentary you're receiving.
And the way that, again, to the point that you just brought up, knowing that when we put out these next round of maps, it's really just, they almost need to like vote on which one they like the best. Is that how we're going to present it? With, like, they can still add comments, but knowing, I'm just trying to get a sense, if I was a council member, I'd want to know, you know, what are people feeling? What map do they like the best? And
So I think that's why, from my perspective, when we've been having discussions about the maps, is that whatever you submit to as your final 3 maps, I've been encouraging it to have the plan in mind that those are the maps you intend to submit to council, so that council members can start viewing those maps once those maps go out on November 10th and start preparing themselves for their vote, which will be coming in December. So the point of these maps is, or the comments on these maps for me, is to say from the community, which map do you like and why, or which map do you think is absolutely horrible and why, and not necessarily, I think my neighborhood should be grouped with this district or that district, but more so, which of these maps do you like or dislike and why? And so that's kind of how the marketing and messaging will be for these maps, because I think, there won't be any changes that we'd be able to make after that, just because this process has to end by December 31st. And so because we don't have that time, it's just primarily for them to tell us what they like. And when I say what they like, I mean the maps they like, not the actual.
thank you, that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
It appears to me that the one change that I had proposed that pertains to Salem Village, again, number of vocal folks there, should be pretty straightforward. That's something I can come back with a specific fix for. I really almost view it as a fix. I mean, it's just really moving over to the east side of Cleveland Avenue and grabbing some population there and putting it into District A instead of going south into Salem. And it looks like that will work, and I don't think that's, there doesn't appear to me to be anything unreasonable about it at all, so.
Yep. All right. Any other commissioners with comments, thoughts, action plans?
I do have a comment, just again, knowing that this is a really critical time for us to gather input. I don't believe the Columbus Dispatch covered our release of these maps, did they?
I am not for certain. Lucy, would you happen to know that by chance?
Okay. I'm wondering if we can possibly do the comms team could reach out to them to try to get them to, at least write about it, so it's another way to raise awareness. Submit an op-ed.
What'd she say?
To submit an op-ed. Something I think we should absolutely think about. And then outreach to our non-traditional outlets. I'm thinking about the New American.
Thinking about what?
What the New American newspaper. I know like La Mega Radio is big in the Latino community. Again, it's just the awareness factor.
I can talk to our comms team, 'cause I know they share information, so I can double check to see what outreach they've done and who's been contacted and whatnot.
Thank you.
All right, so again, it sounds like each of us will use our Esri software to take a look, and we will come back Wednesday with what we have, either simply an addendum or two to the maps that had comments related to a divided complex or moving numbers to another section. There is an ambitious plan to have a map created or close to creation that has each of the area commissions intact and the 3 architectural review commission districts as well. And we may come back and see additional maps. But next Wednesday is when we would gather again and share our individual work and collectively lean in and have a product again, either that matches what we have outside with a few adjustments or the possibility of a few new ambitious things that we're exposed to next Wednesday. So if that's the plan and that's what we're intending to do with our time, I'd say that we're on pace to meet our goal. And I think that we've reached the end of our productive capacity for this evening. And so with that, I'll call this meeting adjourned, unless I hear otherwise from any of you commissioners. All right, this meeting is adjourned.